Evening, we're back once again. Chris?
With the Renegade Master.
Yeah, the Renegades, I'm going to go with it. With the Renegade Masters.
You set it up so well, Tony. You had to go there.
I mean, that's maybe how we should do every episode from now on. So, hello people, wherever you are listening to us from. It's Tony, Captain Team England. Chris, Vice Captain Team England. Tonight, today, this morning, whatever you listen to us at, we are joined by two very special guests. One, somebody we've had on before, current World Champion of Warahammer 40,000, Manny Cheema. Hello, Manny.
Hi, guys.
And another, one of the most infamous characters in 40k, England's beloved Alex Harrison. Hello, Alex.
Hello, mate. Thanks for having me on.
Boo, boo. What?
Currently enjoying a mouthful of pizza. So, there we go. In high def. And we've got you boys on to talk about your recent escapades, events at the Alpine Alpine Cup, which is a 5-man 40k teams event that had, I think, around 72 teams, was it, in the end?
Yeah, 72 teams.
72 teams of 5, which is probably one of, if not the biggest WTC-style event. Bigger than WTC, really, in terms of players.
Yeah, it's huge. Like 360-odd players. I mean, what is the WTC now? Is it 40 teams of 8?
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, so that's 320 players, roughly.
I think it's a combination of 40k growing as a game and the tournament system becoming more streamlined, so that now it's not WTC's one event and Games Workshop events are another, where it used to be. Like when we started playing together, Manny on Team England, it was like WTC was a whole different world with its own rules and missions and separate cards, and now it's the same game everywhere.
Yeah.
So you should get more people playing, and that's been their goal all along, I think.
Yeah, for sure. It was a great event, by the way, guys. Like, I would recommend it to anyone that hasn't been before or that wants to go, is interested in team events. It was really, really cool.
Well,
I mean, we saw it last year and we wanted to go.
Tell us about the event. So where was it?
I mean, that's the thing, right? It was in Leoben, Austria. Fairly easy to get to be fair. We flew to Vienna airport, and then it was about an hour and a half's drive. So we rented a car for 5 of us in a car. It was pretty cheap, but my God, was it squashy in there?
I can imagine with all your armies, you bought your packaging. Oh my God.
Yeah, the armies. That's the only thing that squashed me.
Well, I mean, you can take Nazim as one of your players. He's quite small, quite svelte.
Yeah.
Just strap into the roof.
Nas sat on the middle seat in the back, the way there, the way back, every trip to the venue. That's it.
What did they have the event at, Manny?
So it was in like a large hall. It was a good venue, actually. The venue itself was good. But like all the way around, it was just like fields and farms. So it was like in the middle of nowhere. You could make as much noise as you wanted. And yeah, the venue was huge. Really, really cool venue. There was no aircon though. It did get hot in that room.
Yeah.
And yeah, but the venue itself was great. And the way the event was run.
Future, though?
So I think, yes, that's where they've been growing the Alpine, I think. But that's where it looks like the WTC will be next year. So hopefully they get some aircon and stuff like that. Now, I will say one thing. Although the overall event was great, around the venue, nothing really to do. So let me give you like a proper... This is where we hit the reality check. We got there at like 9:30. And Alex was like, I'm hungry. Let's eat somewhere. And then we started looking at our phone, and literally everyone's phone just showed one thing, that McDonald's was the only place open. And this was at 9:30 on a Friday evening.
Yeah. Ghost Town.
Oh,
Literally
dear.
Ghost Town.
Yeah, Ghost Town, yeah. 9:30 on a Friday evening, and the only place you can go to get food is McDonald's.
I suppose the comparison would be if you went to some little rural town in, I don't know, countryside somewhere in the UK, you could have the same thing where there might be like a chippy or something.
There's like one fish and chip shop.
Yeah, but we're spoiled for choice now, I think, nowadays. And we go to lots of events, especially around the UK, or if you go to America, where there's like 50, 60 places you can go. You can all go to different places.
I'm more thinking the only reason that I'm a little bit concerned about it is, at the moment it's in Mechelen, and Mechelen's a beautiful town as well. But look, when we go to that square in Mechelen, there's like 10, 11 restaurants there. And there's like 4 or 5 bars. So there's enough to cater for everyone. This McDonald's, you can ask Alex that. This McDonald's, when we rolled up to it on Saturday evening, because we had to go and eat in the same place, because the only place open by the time the event finished, half of the event was at that McDonald's. So there was about 100 of us in one McDonald's trying to get served.
Oh my god.
Yeah.
What you're saying is
Yeah.
Team England's going to be training you guys in barbecue and home cooking services between now and the.
Pretty
that's
much.
what's
Pretty
going on
much.
A sweet Airbnb on me. Oh my
Oh,
god.
Jesus.
That would be the only negative, I think. Though.
Yeah, that's literally the only negative. The rest of the event was amazing. They had all the head refs and refs from the WTC there.
Yeah.
Tom Adriani was there. Jay from Mohawk was there. There loads of refs from the WTC, so that made the event really good and smooth. And yeah, I think loads of top players were there as well. Like Germany had 2 teams there. Poland had 2 teams there. There was the the Stud Czech Dream Team. So there was loads of good teams.
Swiss, French.
Yep,
Oh, you
Swiss,
can see
French,
that,
the Italians, everyone was there.
So, the question that I've been dying to ask since we saw you guys win, because obviously you went and absolutely smashed it. Maybe 500, the only team to come out with the full kind of points total at the end of it. Who's taking home the massive trophy? Where's it going to reside? Is that going to Glasshammer?
Well, Nassim is still there, and we took the trophy back. So the trophy got the ticket. What happened to him?
We just gave up Nasser's seat on the plane.
I mean, that's fair enough.
Let's
We'll
strap
find,
that
we'll find him
trophy
in
in.
Belgium or somewhere at some point.
Yeah, hitchhiking.
No one's really got place for it. Like at home, literally no one.
Of
So
course,
we
it's,
just
it's,
thought-
it's like bigger than you, dude.
Yeah. It's literally like 6 foot. The trophy is
That's
6 foot tall.
amazing.
It's insane. So we just thought, you know what? Look, we could put it at the glass house. We've got this Lieutenant Titus come in for winning the World Champs in Atlanta.
Has he
We've got
finally arrived,
this
has
massive
he? Has he-
Alpine trophy.
Did he get
No,
lost in the
he's
wall?
he's on the way. He's on the way. I've been contacted by the team who are painting him before they send it out, and I'm like, that's awesome that they're painting him as well. And so he's gonna arrive, and then
This
hopefully,
feels like, is it Lysander who gets stuck in the warp for like 1,000 years and arrives at the planet, and in like the Iron Hands have already, so the Iron Warriors have already taken over the planet. This definitely feels like that with this Titus. Glasshammer's going to be
He's
brought out by then. Let's go into then your lists and what you picked and why you picked it.
Go on,
Is it
Alex.
worth discussing our team
Yeah,
composition?
total team comp. Yeah,
Yeah,
go over
let's
that
do it,
quickly
let's
and
do
then
So we had myself on Space Marines, Iron Storm. Black Templars, Iron Storm. Manny was on Eldari, mixed with Jakari. And we had Josh Roberts on Necrons, Canoptic Court version. And then we had Nassim on Guard. And finally we had Nathan Roberts on Grey Knights. And I'll let Manny discuss the reasons why in the list.
Yeah. So well, I think 3 of them made a lot of sense. I think Harrison, and Josh have both been smashing everyone with their armies pretty much. We saw Harrison smashing everyone at Pyra, and we were like, yeah, the Marine build has, it has a role, and if you can spare the first put forward for those Marines, then they can do a real role within the team. So it made sense for Harrison to be on those. And Josh, come on, man. Josh is literally smashing every single event in the UK now. So it'd be a bit weird to move him off Necrons as well. And then Nassim has practiced so much guard, as we all know, like loads and loads of guard. So those were like some obvious choices. I'd recently been looking at the Grey Knights, and I think they add quite a bit to a team. They're very decent at neutering combat armies, which we thought we'd need, because you either need to, with the boards the way they are, I don't know if you guys saw, but there were 2 extra heavy boards added on.
That was what I was
like
going to ask.
specific
so
Alpine boards.
It was WTC style, but the boards made a big swing in it. I remember when they brought the map pack out, you guys were all like, "Oh, that's going to change our team comp."
Yeah, so there were 3 WTC style boards, and then there were 2 Alpine boards, so super heavy boards per row. So you could either do what we did, where you go, okay, we're going to have Alex's Gunline Marine as our put forward, and he's going to pick a favorable light board, and we'll go that way because there's more of those type WTC boards. Or you could go the other way, which is what like Stud Check seemed to do. If you look at their team composition, is they took advantage of having combat armies and picking those Alpine boards and making it harder for people to push into them. So we thought, you know what, Grey Knights, they can actually neuter some of the combat armies a little bit and get small wins off them, even on the Alpine terrain. So that's why, I was looking at the Grey Knights, and I thought they should definitely be in. But then, so we had Nathan practicing using the NIDs, and we just felt like when we were doing the last minute thing, and this was literally like an hour or half an hour before list submission, we were all in a chat, and we just felt that the NIDs were good in an 8-man, but didn't really provide what we needed from them in a 5-man. So we decided that Nathan could shift over to the Grey Knights because they don't take that many reps to get under your belt to know how to use them properly. And Nathan was like, yeah, I can play like 4 or 5 games with them before we go. And he'd already played me with them as well, like me using them. So he knew what they did a little bit. So we shifted Nathan over to the Grey Knights, and we thought, right, so what role could we fulfill with this last spot now? So my choices at that point were either Thousand Sons or Eldar. However, I hadn't had enough reps on the Thousand Sons yet. I'd only played like 10, 11 games with them. But I'd played like 35 odd games with the Eldar. I took them to South Coast GT and stuff like that. And we thought, well, everybody who's going to be picking their boards has already got roles. So the Thousand Sons are either going to prey on people, or if people have gone the same way as us and taken lists like Alex's or Hypercrypt Necrons, which seem to be more popular than Josh's version right now, then let's take an anti-vehicle style Eldari list. So that's what we went for in the end. I maxed out my Haywire and then maxed out my scoring. And we thought, you know what? Even in the matchups where people don't have vehicles, I can still play the game very well and not get like blown out. So it seemed like a really good 5th list to add to the 4 we already had.
So
Did you get into any vehicle lists there, Manny?
Oh,
Imagine you were prayed and everyone was like, nope, haywire everywhere.
Well, yes, I did. Now, to be fair, me and Alex were laughing, and Alex was like, dude, I don't know why you're fantasizing over this. You're not going to get to play a single vehicle army. And they were all laughing at me. Yeah, exactly. So they were all laughing at me. They were like, you're not going to get to play a single vehicle army. And I was like, no. I was like, I'll get lucky, There'll be someone at the event with loads of vehicles that just wants to play me. So they'll just pick me because they just want a game with me. And round one, we were
question about pairing processes, but that is not something to usually plan. Someone's going to want to play.
It works.
Go on.
It
What
works.
happened round one?
So round one, we were challenged by the Werthel Commandos. They're a local Austrian team.
The Bodega Battalion, right?
Yeah, the Bodega Battalion, yeah. They just challenged us, and we were like, hey, sure, you know what? It'd be cool to play a local team. So we just accepted the challenge, and so they had a Votan player that got put forward, and we offered them someone and me. I can't remember who we offered them, but it was definitely me.
Oh,
Yeah,
no.
something like that. And they chose to play me with their 5 Sagittor.
No.
And I was like, okay, this is cool. But then when I got to the table, I played a lovely guy. But as he rolled up to the table, he had a glass hammer tray, glass hammer tape measure, glass hammer
You're
dice.
telling me that Norbert K is sponsored by Glasshammer, and you didn't even give him.
He's a plant.
That's it, baby. He just wanted to play me. And I was
Wow,
like,
that's so
I
cool.
literally came up to Alex and I was like, see, I told you. I told you. So yeah, I played against Votan round one, but it was a little bit. I don't know if they knew exactly what my list did really, because he came out with his army, went on the objectives, was just playing his game, and then I brought out the Scourges to go, and I was like, right, this unit of Scourge is going to shoot first into that Sagittor, and he was like, okay, what's the profile?
Oh no!
And I was like, oh
Yeah.
dude, I was like,
Oh
oh,
god!
the profile is death to all vehicles. That's what the profile is.
It's not even a profile. Just take it off.
That's amazing.
So I
Before
did
we
get
go
to play
into
some
the-
vehicles.
Before we go into the rounds, it's probably worth discussing why we overall picked these armies, because we did go back and forth. Like initially,
absolutely.
Yeah,
I was thinking of Blood Angels. Like we looked at the tables, and a few other teams took them. I know Studcheck took them, Innis took them, and it did work on those boards. But we decided, we went back and forth with how we're gonna pair, because I think you need to figure that out, especially with these tables. The tables need to come into consideration, and also that therefore affects your list choice. Now, with the reps I had with the Marines, I wanted to play the tank list, the Ironstorm Black Templar list, but I knew that, and I had some reps with the Blood Angels, but I had a feeling that they would be better on these boards. But actually, when it came to the final decisions and where we were going to go, i.e., I know Nathan swapped, but even initially when he had NIDs, I would have had first choice of table, because none of our other lists were quite as flexible as my list into playing pretty much anything on an open board, apart from something like Manny's skew anti-vehicle list. Of course, if they had that list, that would just be the list I would go, no, I'll play the other one. But otherwise, I could pretty much play anything. So that's why
we get lots of questions about how we like to pair as a Team England, because obviously the podcast is based about that, around that. But you guys have talked sort of about, you looked at the missions and went, okay, we want to have a variety of armies that play people's strengths. But you've also talked about playing to the terrain setups, and now we're talking about having factions that play to have a first foot forward. How important do you think it is for people preparing for a 5-man team event to go, this is our list that we're going to go with, and this is our tactic before, regardless of what else could be there, with just the general consideration of the meta? How important do you think that is? Do you think that was the reason for your success? Do you think that is the most important thing?
I don't think it's the most important, but it's probably the second most. Right. I think the most important is to have good practice with your list, understand your list, and understand your matchups. That's, of course, I would say the number one thing. And that's why we took our comfort picks more than anything, the most of us. And then the secondary choice is, of course, how we're going to pair, what the tables are like, and what the missions are like. That comes with a bit of prep work, which we did. I feel like we could have done a bit more. You know, we were all prepping for a singles event 2 weeks before, and then, you know, we did a last minute, right, let's have a proper look at these Alpine lists. So, yeah, it was something that we did do some prep work. Certainly could have done more, but I think we did enough. Obviously, it worked out in the end. But yeah, when we were discussing like the list change as well, how are we going to pair into this? What if they have this? What if they have that? What if we lose the roll off for the table? So we always had like a backup plan, or we had I would say we had one main plan, and then we had a few variables which we could go through, and we relied on each other as well. We all knew each other well. We're all friends, but we also know how good as a player we each are, so we can rely on each other. Oh, right, if you get a bad matchup, I know that you'll be able to, you know, push through and do this. So yeah, it's a team thing, isn't it? At the end of the day, we got to rely on each other's experience. And when we did our matrices, which we designed for, I think 7 or 8 teams, which we believed we'd either potentially play or give us a tough game. We couldn't do a matrix for everyone because there were so many teams, but we picked 8 that we thought, oh, yep, these are good teams. Let's do a matrix for them. It looked good. I think we made the right choices in the end. And the biggest thing, as Manny said, was swapping Manny to Eldar, because that allowed us to either blunt some lists, which we wanted anyway from the NIDs, but it allowed them to blunt them highly, i.e. your minimum getting that like 11-9 bad game. Whereas NIDs can falter. If they go second, for example, they can't block with the gargoyles. Whereas Eldar are always going to pretty much score a minimum 40-point secondary. They struggle on primary, but they can at least deny it. So they're always going to keep it a close game. However, because we knew our meta was vehicles as well, and we felt that vehicles were still good on these boards, that we wanted at least a big counter so we could force our opponent into the other matchup, which isn't as bad. That was one of the most important things for our theory crafting.
And how accurate do you feel like your matrix was over the weekend? Do you think you guys nailed it?
I'd say pretty much overall spot on. I don't think anything was wildly inaccurate, at least from my point of view. What about you, Manny?
No, yeah, I have to agree, to be fair, because the only anomaly, well, I think people will be looking at my results going, well, there's a few anomalies there, because I got like a 19 and like a 20 in games that I have as grays.
Humble brag.
Yeah, you got in the second game.
I think you're always going to have one game which either goes above or below.
Yeah.
That could be a number of, as we all know, it's either a player skill, a big mistake, or not understanding the matchup.
Well, 13-7 into Necrons is maybe a player skill one. We'll talk about these. 19-1 into a Necrons is an interesting one as well. And then obviously the sub-check round with 11-9 into 1,000 Suns against you, Manny, and then the 20-0 against 1,000 Suns in the next one. So
yeah, so that's what I'm talking about there.
Let's seed into the rounds then, because my next one, I suppose, is you talked about the list you've picked or why you picked it for the overall, and maybe a bit more depth. We'll go with you first, maybe Alex. Why have you built your Ironstorm list in this particular way? What are the choices that led you to this version? Because you tried 2 Storm Ravens, 1 Storm Raven, now no Storm Ravens.
Yes, yeah. So I think a few people have noticed I've been playing this list, or a variation of this list, for the past 4 or 5 events that I've been to.
Because you love yellow tanks.
I love yellow tanks. Yeah. Yellow car park.
I even matched my Scourges yellow
Yeah, I was impressed.
just to please Harrison.
Jesus Christ.
But yeah, the archetype of the list hasn't really changed over the course of those games. However, I've redesigned it slightly to be a bit more, I don't know, hard hitting, because I know what it can do in terms of scoring. That I got rid of some elements like the Crusaders. So before and still a lot of Ironstorm players are taking Crusader squads and Rhinos. I just think they're a waste of points. I think if you're gonna go skew, you just lean into it. So what I did was I got rid of a lot of those little scoring elements and just threw in 3 Valiants. And the Valiants, after every single game, everyone commented on them that I played. They were like, "Wow, those Valiants are really good. They're really annoying. That's a lot of melter. You know, I've got 18 melter shots just from those 3 tanks. They're a really good target for my stratagem, and they're still, you know, costed fairly in terms of their output, their survivability. You know, all my tanks are pretty squishy. If you can kill tanks, they're going to die. There's no invuns, but it's just adding to that element of, oh, you've got 11 holes. Now, the difference between my list and others, other Iron Storms, is almost every single one of my tank is a threat. So because of that, your opponent has to really think about pushing or countering my push. I can play a bit more aggressive, lose some tanks, and still hit you just as hard. So that's I think the biggest difference. And the reason why I took the Storm Raven out is I wasn't overly impressed with it at Tapira. It was still fairly hard to move around on the WTC boards. Its damage output was pretty actually weak or swingy because it wasn't
And even
always...
harder on the Alpine, right? Even harder on it if you play on the 2 Alpine boards.
Correct. Yes.
Pyro
So
was
that's
the
something I need.
the 8-man teams that you played in, wasn't it, for England at the end of February? I love that, but your comment there, by the way, that the your army and its stratagem, because there's just not one stratagem.
It's single
you
stratagem.
occasionally treat yourself to an armor attempt, but most of the time, you're
There's
like,
two.
No,
I'd say there's two. There's the shoot back stratagem and Mercy's weakness, the extra shots on
yeah,
5,
that's the
quick
main one,
fives.
isn't it?
Those are the 2 main ones, and both of them were clutch the whole weekend. So, yeah, but that I think I don't need to overly go into what the Iron Storm does. I think people know by now, but I'm happy to go into
No, I
during
think
my
that,
game
I think it's
whole
just.
list.
I think people want to just know when they listen. When you get people on, especially speak about lists, what you're thinking. Why do you have the list built like that? And I think your first point of what is the most important feature. Well, you're gonna have to get this army together and play some games with it. And things like the Valiants, you find through playtesting, and you go on paper, you might go that tank's not very good. It doesn't have the range. The melters are short range. I'm never going to get it up to particular tanks. But when it's part of an army that's got so many vehicles in it, so many hulls, and people are having to come close to charge things, melter gun things, grenade things, you're going, oh, I'm getting mileage out of it. It makes perfect sense.
Yeah, and I think the one thing that does catch people off is even the las cannons. I know they're only strength 10, but they're twin linked. They're 36-inch range, so it's like having another Predator.
Yeah.
Because the Predators have 2 las cannons. Well, I've got another 2. Yes, they're strength 10, but they're wounding most vehicles on 4s, which are twin linked. So actually, you still have long range firepower on it, and it all adds up. Another point is a lot of midfield holders. Units that hold midfield objectives, are things like 3 wound, toughness 6, 4+ invuln like Bullgrin, or 8 bound, or these tough units to deal with. They might not necessarily be tanks, and Valiants absolutely destroy them if you get close. So that was another reason I just wanted to be able to clear that mid board a bit easier and increase that differential so that I can hold primary easier.
And then Manny, the Eldars. You've already mentioned that it's a very heavy vehicle anti-skew list. I think the interesting thing with yours maybe is that it is using the Dark Eldar allies, and you're giving up the... Is it not? I was going to say the crutch, but it's probably just more of a staple, isn't it? The Autarch Wayleaper Warlord giving you 2 CPs to let you fire and fade. You don't really have that. Do you find that is a massive kind of risk with the list, that you have to play the cards game to sacrifice cards to get CPs, or is it just you take it on the chin and go, that's fine? You haven't really got a combat threat in the list, I would say, apart from your Vrain and maybe 5 dudes that can mildly pester somebody with daggers.
It was
really change your style, or do you think, because if I go online to BCP now, we would find avatars in Khans, Vrain, then a big squad of Harlequins, Solitaires, Troop Masters in squads in Falcons. Like there's 100 different ways to build it.
Yeah. Pretty much most of the people were taking like Avatar, Incarn, or some sort of combat threat, like the big 11-man unit, like you say, and stuff like that. And of course, pretty much most of them are not playing Ynnari. They're all playing like the Fugan and the Wayleaper. But I actually found the strength of this list in our composition was the fact that if I didn't get a favorable matchup, which, someone has to do, and being the 5th list, I thought, it makes more sense for me to get that, is not everyone's going to get their matchup. So I was like, well, how do I change my list so that when I don't get a favorable matchup, I still blunt people very hard? And I just came to the conclusion, if I drop Fugan and I drop the Wayleaper and I just take 20 units, that's probably the best way. I'll go and score my points regardless of what I'm playing against. And I do still have some damage in the list. So that's the route I went down. And to be honest, I didn't really miss the Wayleaper. The only reason I was missing the Wayleaper a little bit was in the games where I did take Fixed, because I took Fixed against both of the Thousand Suns players, interestingly. And now in both of those, I can't get behind enemy lines with most units turn 1, because usually you have to fire and fade to do it, which obviously I don't have the CP for if I've gone first. So that is the reason why the Shroud Runner's there. A lot of people were asking me on the weekend, why have you got the Shroud Runners in? And I was like, well, I got 80 points spare. I can take a small unit here or there. And I thought, what's the best addition? And knowing that I've dropped my Wayleaper, it's probably best to take the Shroud Runners, because they're a unit that can move 9 inches pre-game. So they can scout 9 before the game, and then they can advance and still do actions, because they're still equipped with shuriken pistols, which are assault. So if you have a 6, or if, of course, turn 1 I do have 1 CP for going first, I can use the auto advance 6-inch strat, which what that lets me do is move 9 and then move another 20. So in pretty much all deployment zones, I can put them on the front line, because if I go second, I can scout them somewhere safe 9 inches. And if I go first, I can move them 29 inches into my opponent's deployment zone and get behind enemy lines and deploy teleport homers turn 1, which is what I did against the Thousand Suns players. So that's how I kind of wrote the list, and that's why I didn't really miss the Autarch very much. I mean, most people really like to use Phantasm and Fire and Fade every turn, and yes, the 3CP is very big for that. I can do that if I play cards, but if I don't, if I'm playing Fixed, then you just have to be a little bit more careful to not be having loads of Phantasm targets and just playing with your Fire and Fade and playing a little bit more reliably and a bit tighter. Because I did have, 6 Fire and Fading units. 6 units that always shoot and then move. So having a 7th one just was a nice bonus. And I used it on the Skyweavers and the Warp Spiders most, Fire and Fade. But yeah, I think because the reason why the list is built the way it is it scares away vehicles, but the opposition team can't always keep all of their vehicle lists safe from me. So that was really good to have the Haywire. And then on the other side of it, my scoring is just really high. I dropped my Fire Dragons to put even more scoring in. So I was like, maybe people can push into me. But the damage is also deceptive. A lot of people, for example, the Necron player that I played round 3, where I got the 19. So this is what I was saying about the, my Matrix maybe looks like it was a little bit inaccurate. But the reasons for those are different. Like, for example, when I played the first Necron player, it was 13-7. And that's roughly what I thought the game would be. And then the second time was 19-1, because the Necron player, the reason for it was the Necron player underestimated my firepower. And they were like, well, you've got like 19 units that all do little plink damage. And I was like, yes, but when you push on me and you let all 19 shoot at the same time, it adds up to a massive amount of firepower while I'm still scoring. So that's why the results went that way. And the same thing happened with the Thousand Suns. Brian played tight, I played tight, so I got the grey that I predicted against Thousand Suns against Brian.
Let's stop you there, and let's go into some of these rounds. So I think without being rude to the particular battalion, that was I've got the scores on the screen here for people who are watching on YouTube or listening to us on podcast. But that was Alex won 17-3 against Sisters. Josh was 20-0 into Marines. You 20-0 the Vatan player, as already mentioned. Naseem 20-0 to Grey Knights with the Guard Artillery, shocker. And Nathan got a 14-6 into Necrons. So that was a good round to get under your belt. A nice round, nice guys to play after you travelled. And it's always good at a team event to have a reasonable first round, right?
Yeah, for sure.
But we move on to round 2. Round 2 was the Zugzwang, is that right? Oh no, it's not Zugzwang. It was.
No, I think it was Baston.
Apologies.
It was the French team.
French
Baston
teams.
was
Baston.
round 2.
Yeah, Baston, Paul Newberger, Tanker, Slee Kid, Raphael, and Julian Bresson. Yeah. They ended up in 16th position with 6 points. So probably 2 losses out of their 5 games. And they were running, let's see, Thousand Sons, Necrons, Space Marines, Eldari, and Sisters. So how did you guys pair that one?
The pairing strategy was for this one was, you know, similar to what our normal pairing strategy is of give Alex his board. So Alex was like our secret first weapon. Well, not a secret weapon. He was the loud, big weapon at the start.
Give me that board. Give it.
give that board. Yeah, it's like, give that board. I need that board. Alex.
You were on stream for this, and anybody who's interested can go and watch this game because I was watching it. We were doing a teaming practice on that day as well, and I was kind of coaching. We'd done a paired round, and you lost 6 tanks at the start of this guy's turn 2 because he left Magnus out. You pushed, dented Magnus down to 2 wounds, and then his counter push was crazy.
Yeah, so I think both of us got a bit trigger happy here. It started with me. So apparently he's played this matchup before, and he seems to think he realized after he did make a big mistake, but he seems to think that Magnus does kind of go on the edge, pop out, kills a tank, and takes a bit of damage, and then like smashes the car park. But I don't think that is the correct play.
So what was his mistake? Because I'm interested in this one because I watched this and I thought that he could have blocked you with his units that he had and stopped you being able to push out.
That was partly my fault as well. I didn't block his cultists, so I had a unit of scouts and I got a bit focused on his unit to my left. Where I was like, right, I can't interact with that unit. If it gets behind that wall, I need to put my scouts there to kind of block or tag them up and things like that. Maybe grenade, shoot, charge, or whatever. But it left his cultists to just pre-game move and potentially block me on my right side or his left side.
And he could double move them, right? He could pre-game move, double move.
Correct, yeah. So that should have been his play. And I was considering overwatching them, which I think he was scared about. He knows that the Reaper can potentially pick up a fair amount of them. So I think he decided against it, or at least in my head he did. I believe when we talked after, he didn't really think about that. He just wanted to get that unit behind that wall, tucked away, and hold that objective for at least a turn. Which also is another good call. So whatever he was thinking, he wanted to stick to. However, I think if he blocks me a bit better, it would have slowed me down for sure, and it would have stopped me. Well, actually, I think it would have been better for me because it would have stopped me playing so aggressive in my turn, trying to go for Magnus. So he proceeded to bring Magnus out and shoot a tank, dropped it down to 1 wound, so I got quite lucky there. I think I AOC'd just to kind of reduce the chances of him killing it, but he still rolled quite well on his dev wounds, so that's why it was down to 1 wound, because I'd cover an AOC, I think from his little shots I'm getting a 3-up save, and these big shots I'm getting a 4-up save, but he still did 10 damage, so that was tough. Oh no, that was it. I didn't use AOC. I decided to save my CP to shoot him back, which was a bit risky, but I thought if I could start plinking wounds off Magnus, because he's used his CP, can't blank any damage, that it would give me a bit of an upper hand. I only believe I did 3 wounds. I got 1 las cannon through and rolled a 2, which was a bit frustrating. If that was like a 4, 5, or 6, he would have been dead next turn, which I'll go into in a minute. But, you know, I thought that was the correct play. I needed to get him, you know, each wound counts when it comes to Magnus. So that was his sort of turn. Oh, and he double doom bolted with another squad and then moved them back behind the wall. And that dropped another tank down to 1 wound. Now, I could have been out of range from all this, but it's pretty hard to be out of range in this deployment for a quite fast-moving army that can just move up, move back, things like that. He's always going to be able to double doom on me, so I knew that I needed to pretty much frontline so that I can react to whatever he does. So I don't think anyone made some glaring mistakes there, apart from perhaps Magnus. So I got a bit trigger happy. I was like, right, I'm going to kill Magnus now. So I moved everything up. The biggest thing really was I've realized that my impulsor wasn't where I usually deploy it in this deployment. So usually my impulsor is directly at the bottom where it can move out and get the angle to pop out, shoot, and then get back in with the eliminators, which is their ability, utilizing firing deck on the impulsor to shoot the unit again onto Magnus with Mercy's weakness. And that would usually pretty much dent Magnus or drop him down to a few wounds. However, instead I had a Reaper there, so that blocked my impulsor getting line of sight to Magnus, which was very infuriating. Because even when I was trying to like fiddle around with the impulsor and try and see through a window, which we spent a long time double checking.
I was going to say, you could see on the battle report that you guys trying to do that, and I didn't realise that was because of a deployment mistake. I suppose that's a big problem with the car park, that if you do put a model in the wrong place, it's suddenly very difficult for you to reposition it, even though they move reasonable distance.
Yeah,
you need to get an exact spot.
There was a number of like little errors that I did at that point, i.e. my characters were too far back to really give an advance and shoot, so I can move the Reaper further forward. But the risk that you have if you put your characters, your Tech Marines, too far forward, is he could fly across with a Exalted Sorcerer on disc.
Make that sacrifice, yeah. The trade is worth it for him, isn't it?
Yeah, because he could fly over, Doombot one, Doombot the other, and then I lose both. So I had to kind of not play silly and put them on the line. However, of course, if he doesn't do that, great. I can't play silly with those characters. So they were further back hidden, so they weren't able to get lethals in range or the the advanced and shooting range. So I could, in the end, only get, I believe, three tanks on Magnus, which was the Predator that had been dropped down to 1 wound, a Impulsor on the other side, which got the Incursors out because I was going to grenade at this point because I knew that Mercy's weakness was useless on a Reaper. Not useless, but not as good. And then, the 1 Reaper. And I oafed Magnus, and everything else moved up. I probably should have hidden 1 or 2 more tanks that weren't out at this point. But I thought that, well, I've got 4 tanks out. I may as well just give him more threat saturation. That's what was going through my mind. I was like, well, he can only kill so much with his army. And I was expecting him to kill 4 tanks back, including the ones on 1 wound, because I was hoping Magnus would be dead. So I began shooting my Reaper, popped Mercy's weakness, and halfway through shooting the tank, I forgot to do the grenade strat. And this is simply just because I got too hungry to kill Magnus. Now, if you look at the maths, the Reaper versus a grenade strat, the extra mortals you get with the extra hits, it's not too different, but I think the grenade strat edges it ever so slightly. It averages 3 mortals, whereas the Reaper averages 2 more mortals, but the Reaper does average a couple of extra wounds with the other shots. So maybe you could say it wasn't a big mistake in the end, but in my head it was. Because when I did shoot, once the Reaper had finished shooting, I think I only did 4 mortals, which was just under average. I think the average is 5 with Mercy's weakness with 4 rerolls. So that was a bit frustrating. I kicked myself for that. And then I shot I think I had 1 unit of Eliminators as well that could see him. And then the Predator and, the Scout Rocket Launcher managed to wound and go through and do D6 damage. But yeah, once the dust settled, Magnus was left on 2 wounds. So that was very, very big. And even my opponent was a bit shook at this point because he realized his error. He underestimated the damage output of just those tanks. And that could have literally swung the whole game if Magnus was dead. So because he was alive, I was thinking, okay, well, at least Oath is on him. He can't move Magnus because I will Overwatch him. So Magnus is kind of stuck here. I can maybe deal with him next turn. So when my opponent then reacted, he went all in. He got every unit out, Araman's squad, the unit with the, I don't know what the enhancement's called, but the Infernal Master with the extra damage flamer.
Yeah. Screamer Invocation, I think it is. I mean, that's the shooting attack. He's got something else that does Temporal Flux, whatever it is. Yeah, go on. Yeah.
He literally just got everything out from behind the walls and shot. And Jesus Christ, did he roll well. He managed to kill both tanks with 1 wound left. He managed to kill a Lancer. He managed to kill an Impulsor. He managed to kill a Reaper. And
some of the content as well, I think.
Yeah, he killed 3 Eliminators and oh no, he killed both Impulsors. Yeah, so there was 6 tanks gone and 3 Eliminators after his shooting phase, and that was just
Ouch.
Yeah, it was a big ouch.
It looked done at that point. It was like,
Yeah.
oh no,
I've never
Alex
lost
has made a
that many
mistake.
tanks.
Yeah.
I've never lost that many tanks in one go. And that's where I was like, okay, I've overextended here. I got a bit trigger happy. I should have just still played a little bit reserve, wait for him to extend out, and then counter his push.
This is where I had to tell a couple of people to push.
Yeah.
I came over to Alex. I was like, "How's it going, bro? How's it going, bro?" And Alex was like, "Yeah, I've only lost 6 tanks that turn."
Yeah. I was kind of in disbelief, and I was kind of angry at myself as well. I was like, oh man, like if this is a singles event, you've only got yourself to blame, but I'm affecting the whole team at this point. So I was a bit, upset and flustered. So I told Manny what happened. He was obviously a bit like surprised, and well, obviously as was I. I took a step away from the table. I had a look around. I tried to get a plan in my head on how I was going to come back because, yes, I was saying on stream like, "Oh, I'm going to get 20 here," which I think most players would look at that and go, "Yeah."
You were what's the name of the actor in Aliens who goes, "Game over, man, game over." That was you. It was,
I tried to keep a poker face on after that, but right there I was giving away alarm bells that he knew he had me. So
but he
yeah,
didn't.
that wasn't. Yeah, so I managed to step back, have a think, and I was like, right, wait a minute. I've still got 3 more tanks to come on.
Yeah.
If I manage to get a good turn this turn, and stick to my game plan of reducing his Cabal points to a point where he can't do all these shenanigans and kill enough characters and kill enough units, I might be able to get back in this. So I brought on my tanks. I made one error, which was not to leave. I left combat with the incursors, and I should have actually grenade stratted Magnus at that point. But I was so focused on killing all the characters that was one mistake I think I made it this turn. But everything else went pretty much to plan. I managed to wipe out 1, 2, 3, 4 characters, I believe, and 3 units fully, and then
that's a big
half
chunk of
another
Thousand Suns.
Yeah. With all my tanks, with Oath of Moment, with my strats, and that then once the dust settled, I realized that although I couldn't do deploy teleport that turn, I still got 16 points for assassinate, and I was sort of back in it. The points were even, and I remembered I still had second turn, so I was like, wait, if I could survive this and manage to kill enough in my third turn, I could start pushing. But I didn't want to get too far ahead. I was like, okay, I've killed not quite as much as I wanted. I didn't finish off another squad and a character. He still had the damage, and I hadn't killed Magnus. However, he was still scared to move Magnus because he knew I could Overwatch him. So in his turn, he was a little shook up, you could tell, because of how much I killed. He knew that he also messed up with his cards. He went tactical, not fixed. I think that was a big error, because he'd already have maxed Bring It Down, and he could have got some points on Deploy Teleport Omens if that was his second one. So he got quite unlucky with his cards. I think he drew Capture Enemy Outpost, and by this point, I literally had nothing on my home objective because that doesn't give you any points in this mission. So he made a little bit of an error, and we did kind of discuss this. He basically he declared his crystal, he put his unit down, not necessarily the end of the movement phase, but he just he put it down and he rolled his battle shock and failed. And then he realized not shortly after that he could have just not done that because they were oathed. That unit was oathed, so I was going to Overwatch them. He could have not done that and moved a Exalted Sorcerer on disc, double moved it onto my home objective and just get the 8 points. And I was never going to Overwatch that because he was like full wounds. So he realized his error, and I think he looked at me as if like, "Can I do it?" And I said, "Well, to be fair, mate, you've failed that battle shock, and you've already put that unit down. I think that does make a difference now, and you've declared your crystal."
So one little thing there, Alex, is around the battle shock when you set up on the battlefield. People might not know exactly. It's because it's quite a new thing in the latest Aurora FAQ, whatever it is, whereby you don't just, if you're off the battlefield and you're below half strength, you don't take a battle shock at that point. You only take it when you're set up.
Yeah.
So the fact that Alex is saying here he rolled his battle shock too early before he moved all the rest of his models, he then gave him an advantage because he knew that he'd failed the battle shock. So then he would play to move another model onto that objective, when in fact his entire game plan is just not fail that battle shock.
Yeah.
So you wouldn't let someone go back on that. That's not you being harsh. That's having way too much knowledge in advance. So you wouldn't let someone go back on that.
That's what I was implying. Yeah. So
Yeah.
he had put them down and then rolled the battle shock and then failed it, and then realized he didn't even need to do that. Which I understood. I think in a practice game I'd have gone, yeah, okay, yeah, that's a mistake. But again, I'm in a tough spot. I'm on the back foot. I'm playing in a team event. That is big, and he has that prior knowledge now. So I said, yeah, that's unlucky. To be fair to him, I don't think he asked me to change it. He kind of just looked at me and was like, "Oh,
It's
yeah,
the
that's a
hopeful puppy
mistake."
dog eyes going, please,
Yeah.
we both know that I've done this wrong. And it's like, yeah.
Yeah.
It's fine.
And we at this point we both kind of accepted our mistakes. Like he overextended, I overextended. It's one of those games where we both made these little, but we're trying
That's
to be.
not a mistake. See, that's not a. I'm agreeing with Chris here, not just because the rules thing. If somebody forgets to do something, like if they line up a model to charge and they forget to charge that model, even in that setting, I would let them charge it. But if they go through a combination of rules and things, or they don't realise that you can Phantasm or that you can Overwatch, and that's like it's a claw mechanic and they know it. The biggest one I always think of is the reactive move. I always ask every opponent, I don't think there's any reactive moves, or the only reactive move is here, right? Because if I know and they go, yeah, that's it, great. If they don't know, that's the only real gotcha one. That's not a gotcha. That's not you being harsh. If he's cocked up his order of operations and failed something he needed to pass, that's just on him. And he should have seen Thousand Suns, for me, of a very high skill threshold, because if you put the wrong model in the wrong place, that's it, you are screwed. It's a bit like your mech list in some ways. You've got to spend your Cabal points wisely, you've got to do your movement wisely, you've got to put your damage out, because they are very kind of glass cannon, aren't they? They go out and they shoot and they decimate, but it is just Space Marines with inbuns.
Yeah.
Don't have a lot of ways to mitigate damage or grow models back or heal characters, so it's interesting. So that was that his final kind of act of the game, to lose that to do.
So that was his turn 3, and then just to basically wrap up the game, I mean I overwatched that unit. He died. He still got his cards, but I believe that the last 2 turns he didn't get any cards. He might have got 1. But basically, there was 2 little swings. One was he failed battle shock on his 1 cultist that I couldn't kill, so he lost 8 points primary because he was on the objective before it. Yeah,
That's devastating.
That is
I would counter that by saying, well, when I left combat with an eliminator, I rolled a 1 on his desperate breakout. If that eliminator survived, I would have contested it. So it was kind of like, well, we both got unlucky there, really.
That sounds like just a crazy game. It was a crazy game to watch, and if you guys didn't watch that, it's on so round 2 of that event is on War Games Live. You go back and you can see Alex is the main stream game against Paul, and it looked like a cracking game to watch.
It was quality. I really enjoyed it. I said to him after, I was like, that was such an intense game. Like considering we both had quite extreme lists. But it ended up being a real nail biter.
Was that your highlight game of the weekend? Because if I look at the rest of the scores, I mean, we can talk round by round, but I think that we spent quite a lot of time on that one game. That's okay. I think it's interesting. I think that was probably one of the better ones because your other rounds, you guys smash face. The rest of the round seemed to go quite well there. I'm interested that Josh got a 10-10 out of Space Marines. Was that the mission? It's the Space Wolves. Yeah. So it's the Phobos Libby, Grimnar, Triple Thunderwolf will go battle leaders, and Triple Wolf Lord. Oh god, it is a lot of combat.
I believe they had to talk out the last turn because they ran out of time, but I'm not 100% sure.
2 blocks of 10 Wolfen and a 5-man Wolfen. I mean, it's not a lot of subtlety. It's 3 big, huge units of Thunderwolf Cav, Scouts, Infiltrators, Grimnar to give you a backfield character, and the reroll charges for the whole army. And then the Wolfen behind them, because they got a buff in the last update with their weapons just being generally better and their point to go down. That's that trades quite well into his Necrons, doesn't it? Because that Necron list, I suppose, doesn't want to be. It can handle some combat threats, but it doesn't want to face an army of Thunderbolts charging it turn 2.
I believe what happened, to be fair, because Josh did really well into the Necron, into the Wolf Jail player. I think what happened was this was obviously the Alpha Omega mission supply drop, I think it's called.
Yeah.
Where only the objectives in the middle of the board count, and when they rolled it, the best objective for Josh was the first one to disappear, and the best objective for the Space Wolf player was the last one to be on the board.
Yeah.
So that changed the game a bit, and then on top of that, Josh also had to go first.
Yeah, that's tough. Yeah, okay, fair.
Yeah,
so that's tough. So, well, that was if you'd lost that 20-0 at the point we'd lost all those tanks, that would have been big for the round because that would have been in draw range. But obviously a 12-8 meant that everybody kind of cruised through with small wins or a draw, and that took you into game 3 at the end of the day. That was the Zugzwang then. So that was Christian, Nicholas, Leaf, Nicholas and Paul. And Alex, you recovered to go 19-1 into the next Thousand Suns player. Applied all of your learning from your first game.
I did, yeah, I utilised that. And I got a lovely board, absolutely beautiful. He could not hide anywhere, bless him.
And he just couldn't push at you, I guess.
No.
And then Manny, you did the same thing. Necrons, 19-1?
So this is the first moment where you're like, okay, that didn't match up to the Matrix. Now, the reason for that is the last game, of course, in round 2, just to give a bit of a thing here, guys, is round 2 was the first real test for my army. Because round 2 and round 4 are my worst 2 missions. But we knew that going in. My worst 2 missions out of the entire mission range were both being played at this event. And that's because as Eldar, I need to hit and run. I'm not very good at staying alive on primaries in the mid-board. So these 2 missions where my home objective doesn't really count for any primaries are very, very hard for me. So round 2 was a bit spicy in that regard. So when I went into round 3, I was like, okay, actually, you know what? I just played against a Necron Hypercrypt, and I got 13 points. Now I'm playing a Hypercrypt again, but this time I can actually hold some primaries quite reliably. There were 2 ruins, my home one, and a mid-board one on the top left flank that I can actually hold pretty reliably. So I was like, I actually might get 10 a turn here, which is quite important, quite big. And it was also, which mission was this one? Which mission was number 3? I forget. Was it Taken? No, it wasn't Taken Hold. It was Priority Targets, I believe. So it was 10 points a turn and up to 15 points at the end of the game, and it was sweeping engagement.
Yep.
I believe so. It was that one, and I think my opponent quickly realized. So I deployed everything on the board, and my opponent did too. And I think he quickly realized that maybe he shouldn't have deployed the monolith because there's only one place on that entire board that the monolith could go. And what that meant is once he placed that monolith down, obviously you've got to remember he has like 14 drops, and I have like 19 drops. So all 3 of my Scourge units and my Skyweaver unit were going to be my last drop. So I got to see where he put everything. And because he put that monolith in the safe spot, what it meant is his 2 Doomsday Arcs had to be slightly further forward, which gave me a free Doomsday Arc kill in the first turn and move my Scourges to safe positions. And I think what happened after that was he maybe panicked a little that the Doomsday Arc died straight away, but also it's also important to mention that these Zugzwang guys, they were really, really good players, actually. They are a TTS team mainly, and this was their first ever in-person team event. Ever. And I think at the end of the event, they won a trophy for the best new team.
They were like 5th or something, right? They were right up there.
Yeah.
They came 4th. They only lost to you in all their other rounds.
They beat Team Germany.
They beat Team Germany just before us, yeah.
They've got a 2-9-1, so they've got a better strength of schedule than No Name, who came second, and they're 10 behind Studcheck. Your strength of schedule was 2-9-3, so they played tough teams. They got 300 battle points, which is a bit on the lower side of the battle point side, but they did really well, yeah.
That is worth noting. It was their first ever event, and I think what it was for him is every time I went into my turn, I kind of knew, I wanted to move these units here to attack with, and these units here to score with. And I was kind of just like, bang, 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 my turn is done. But then he would come into his turn, and I think it's that, on TTS, you can spend some time. You can take 10 minutes at the start of your turn to decide what you want to do and then play the turn. But I think the reality of, when you're playing on a chess clock at an event, I did say to him, I'm not going to death clock you or anything like that. Just, play your game. The clock's just there to make sure we get through the game. But I think that pressure of having the clock there, that actually you can't stand there for 10 minutes at the start of every single one of your turns and plan out what you're going to do. So I think he struggled a little bit with that. And what happened because of that, he pushed a little. And I think the round was going a little bit badly for them. The other games were coming out fairly good. So then he tried a big push. But he put his monolith in the incorrect place. He let me get 2 Scourge units, a D-cannon, and my Skyweavers to be able to target the monolith.
That's a dead monolith.
Yeah, that monolith went down real quick. And then he also, I don't think he knew exactly what Ivrain's profile was. So he bought an entire Immortal squad out on one side, a 5-man Immortal squad, and I just ran out with Ivrain and just wiped one-shotted the whole squad dead. And from that point, and then I used triple Warp Spider to kill another unit of Immortals with a character in. So he'd lost quite a lot of pressure, and he'd already lost the Doomsday Arc turn 1, so he lost a lot of his push straight away, and I made sure I killed his Scarab unit and his single Locust first. Because I was like, I want to kill your scoring assets, so you've got to use big stuff to do scoring. And then, basically, I just wanted to leave him with his 2 Catan. I'm going to learn from the last game, and I'm just going to kill everything else and leave you with your 2 Catan, and I'll outscore them, and I can make sure that Catans on objectives don't score primaries. Because I could just put 5 Hawks there, or 5 Spiders there, 4 Skyweavers there. So that's basically was my game plan. And then I think the last straw was, it was looking like it was going to be like 14-6, 15-5 to me. But there was this one turn where Ivrain made a fairly decent push to the middle of the board. And I think he kind of forgot a little bit about Phantasm. So he played his turn out, put the Catans where he wanted, and then he had a 10-man Immortal squad. In the Chris, you'll know in the Cryptech Hypercrypt, you have the 1 damage unit.
Yeah. Oh, with Plasmancer.
That's the guy. Yeah, the one that has like full rerolls to hit for the squad and crit
Yeah,
fights.
the Arisen Tyrant. Yeah.
Yeah, so he had like a big 10-man squad with them, and they came down the side and absolutely nuked like 2 entire units of Scourges. And he was like, because I know they do Dev Wounds against Katana, and I was like, okay, that was a good choice. But when he moved them to shoot, they were like 16, 17 inches from Ivrain's unit. But then he only lined up 1 Doomsday Arc to shoot into Ivrain's unit. So what I did was I phantasmed and I rolled a 5. So I moved Ivrain's unit 5 inches forwards towards his deployment zone, which meant the Doomsday Arc could no longer see her. And now, after she moves 8, she's only got like a 6-inch charge into his squad. And I had a 5 on my dice. So I I moved Ivrain through the wall, and I shot into the Immortals. She killed 7 Immortals on her own with the shooting, because it hits on 2s with a reroll, wounds on 2s with a reroll, and it's dev wounds. So she got 7 shots, and that's 7 dead Immortals in most cases. And then she charged in, and that was basically it. Because at that point, he was left with just 2 Catans teleporting around. So he did have enough to get his 1 point, because he managed to get up to like 48 points on scoring. But yeah, I think that was... I don't think he quite realized the damage potential of it. And this is what I was talking about. I think when you take this style of Eldar list, the damage is kind of deceptive. You look at a lot of the units and you go, yeah, 5 Warp Spiders, they'll do 3 mortal wounds. It's a Scourge unit, they might do 3 dev wounds because they might roll 1-6. But when you're like, okay, but there's 3 of those Scourge units and a Skyweaver unit, even if they only roll 1-6 each against non-tanks, that's 12 dev wounds. And then each unit of Warp Spiders, because there's 3 of them, will do like 3 dev wounds. There's 21 dev wounds. And it's when you start adding it all up, you're like, if Rain comes on top of that, she kills like 6-7 infantry on her own. And then you add everything on top, triple D cannon, all of that kind of stuff. Triple Shadow Spectres as well. I mainly just use them to move out somewhere, shoot, move again, and score primaries and missions and deny primary. But it's just a deceptive amount of damage from small units that all adds up together when you shoot 19 of these units at the same time. And I think it was just a little bit of inexperience of playing into Yunari.
Breaking news while we're doing this podcast. Custodians have lost the generic army-wide 4+3 on pain against mortal wounds, and it's now a 1 CP strat.
Oh.
God.
Ooh, that's good.
As you're talking about Eldar that do so many mortal wounds, I'm looking at a hastily snipped screenshot of somebody's Shield Host book, and I'm like,
oh, is that another good match of 1,000 Suns, is it?
1,000 Suns.
Oh no!
Yeah.
Oh god, yeah.
Because they changed the martial mastery detachment rule to be they get criticals on a 5+ to hit, for their martial guitars, and then you get improve the AP of Custodes models with the martial guitar ability by 1. So they get +1 AP on their combat weapons and crits on a 5. So they're more lethal in combat.
So it looks like they're getting a little bit less durable. 'Cause I suppose GW aren't liking these.
Confirmed though, is it? It's not confirmed.
What isn't confirmed?
Probably shouldn't talk about leaks, right?
We're a podcast and somebody has leaked something. I'm going to talk about it. I'm not employed by Games Workshop. Are you? Is Manny? Is Chris? No. There you go then. So somebody on the internet has a picture of a book somewhere. I'm able to see it. There you go.
I mean, that, like what you say there, it sounds like they're getting a little bit less durable because maybe people aren't liking these unkillable units. But it sounds like they're getting
Games
brilliant.
Workshop doesn't want unkillable units. I think it wants more units. It wouldn't be surprising to me if they reduce the durability but make them more lethal and put the points less because they go cool. 300 points for 5 guys, whatever it is. Oh, well now we'll make them 200 points. Oh, but they die much easier.
Yeah, that could be quite cool actually. Be interesting if that's the way they go with them.
I digress.
Back to the scheduled program.
Well, the scheduled programming interrupted. Breaking custodian news. Da, da, da. I have to put a sound effect in. So we've got 2 rounds left to talk about, really. I think that the 4th round is probably the biggest round of the event because the 5th round, no disrespect to the guys who played in the 5th round from Brilliance, but you guys absolutely whooped them. Fair?
Yeah, that was Team Switzerland. Williams, their captain. Williams, I've known with William for a few years now from WTC Team Switzerland, and he's a really nice guy. And I think what he was doing is he was trying out prospects at the event.
Yeah.
And fair play to them. These prospects have put up a really good fight for, giving him a reason for picking. They were playing in the final.
Yeah.
And I think that's fantastic for, having a load of prospects on your team. I think that's incredible. And I think it's really cool to see.
Get knocked down the leaderboard. Yeah, they came 8th in the end. They were after 4 wins.
But at least they were playing for the win in the last round.
That's completely it.
That's very big.
We've done that at WTC enough times, Manny, to know that is just
exactly.
At least you were there. But I suppose yours was the closest game in that round, Alex, with 11-9 into the Marine Mirror. Was that a card bark off? Was that a Blood Angels style?
No, I played their Gladius, and I think it just came down to we ran out of time. We had to quickly play the last 2 turns, and to be honest, not to take anything away from my opponent, it was a great game. It was a tight game for the first few turns. He went first, deployed on the line, which meant he could play aggressive, pin me in the corner. But we'd already won the round, so I didn't really, do anything wild. I just went, I got these points, that'll do. I could have got 0. So it wasn't like I need to push this, I need to do this, I need to do that. It was a case of, right, I'll just do an action there, cool, your turn, kind of thing. Just because he'd clocked out, I still had half an hour left. Everyone else was done. So I said, look, just use my time. Let's play quick, get our points.
That's the right way to do it in team events as well, isn't it? You go, especially when it doesn't have any bearing, I suppose. Because everybody else has already smashed it. Well, let's go back around then. Because Sunday morning, you're playing. You've already called them the super team, Manny. So you've got a team of Innes Wilson, who is captain of Team Scotland, is a very famous kind of face within the 40k community. Does his own coaching service. Been leading Team Scotland for a while now. I think he doesn't do his own podcast anymore, does he?
I think he's a part of Stat Check.
Just part of Stat Check. Okay, so Brian Seep is applying for Team America this year, and I think he's got a very good chance of making it on there. But has been working for Team Scotland for the past few years, and he is a very versatile 40k player. Anthony Vanella, who is Mr. World Eaters, and has been playing them for absolutely ages, and you very rarely see him on the end of a losing result, so we'll talk about that one maybe. Pumba and Typhus are both kind of staples in the WTC community, both know their army list inside out. You've got Pumba on Death Guard, Typhus on Sisters. So we alluded to earlier in the podcast about you guys had a plan for this round. Obviously, you don't know what factions they're going to take, but you know the names on the team. You know roughly what factions you think they're going to be on. What was the pairing process going for this mission, this round? Talk us through it.
This one was kind of interesting because, of course, we sat down as a team first on Saturday evening, and we were all talking, and we tried to walk it through as a team of if we went with our standard pairing strategy of putting Alex as the first put forward, how would the rest of the round look? And how would that benefit us? Would it go to plan? Would it go the same way as the other rounds have gone? Or would we struggle a little? because these lads, they'd gone quite cleverly. They'd reverse engineered to us basically. So we had teched for Alex to be the first put forward and take a light board. They had gone, okay, this Alpine terrain is great for combat armies, so let's take 2 combat armies that can really push points on those boards. So they'd gone the opposite way to us. So we realized that in this round, it's actually not beneficial to use Alex as the first put forward, because Alex and Nathan have some bad boards, but there's only one that Alex actually can't play on this time. So it's not like the other rounds. In the other rounds, it was like there was one board which was really great for Alex and 4 fairly not great ones.
Yeah.
On this one, there was one that was really not great, but 4 that were like manageable. Like the Alpine ones in this one were not that much better than the, because this was the Hammer and Anvil round, wasn't it, Alex?
Yeah.
Where the Alpine boards and the long, lane ones were not very different. They were all like not super great for Alex, but they weren't bad. There was only one terrible board. So we're like, okay, so Alex doesn't have to be the put forward here. So we noticed very quickly that activating Josh and Alex were like the best things that we could do for our team, and eliminating Nathan's red. So we had 1 red on the matrix. And other than that, the matrix looks kind of healthy. It was kind of yellow. And we kind of thought, like, we need to keep Josh back, and he needs to avoid a combat army. If Josh avoids a combat army...
You could jump in there. Team England pairs in a process usually of red is bad, amber's bad, but you get points.
Oh, sorry,
Black,
yes.
Black is a draw, yellow is a good win, green is a big win. So you think your matrix is looking pretty much bad for Nathan in one result, but otherwise, if he dodges that, it's all good draws or small wins, yeah?
We had
kind of healthy.
We had Josh on a couple of bad games against the World Eaters and the Blood Angels, mostly because these boards, although Manny was saying, they're manageable for me, they're still pretty heavy. If anything, this was probably the worst round we could have played them. I think we were more comfortable in other rounds.
Yeah.
But the boards changed the way we were going to pair, notably to protect Josh. Because if Josh gets a really bad matchup, like the rest of us could play to points, whereas if Josh plays into World Eaters, gets pinned in a corner, and all his race die to Angron and etc., he's not really going to get barely any points. The same applies to Blood Angels. They can just remove wraiths like they're nothing.
So come on, boys, stop it. I feel like you're dancing around it. Who went forward first? Who was the sacrificial lamb?
So we played it the other way, and we went, right, I'll go forward first then.
Okay.
So we used me as a put forward. And it was interesting here because what we predicted was they'll give me Typhus. That's what we predicted. And we predicted that their put forward would be Pumba with his Death Guard. So we're like, okay, they'll give me Sisters, and hopefully with the Sisters, they'll give me one of the combat armies, Blood Angels or World Eaters. Now, I felt that I was better into the World Eaters. The World Eaters would be like a winish kind of situation for me because they've got less assets, but the Blood Angels would be a small loss. So our plan was that I would take the combat, leave the Sisters in the Matrix, because even though they're a good game for me, we have other armies which are good into those Sisters. So that was the plan all along. So I would take the Blood Angels, have a small loss, but then take away board 1, which is the worst board for Nathan and Alex. So what that lets us do is it activates Nathan and Alex to play on boards that aren't so bad for them. But also, now Josh can be the next put forward, because one of the 2 combat armies he was scared of are gone, and he's going to get a yellow now, which is very big for our team. They were either going to do that, or they were going to give me Sisters and Thousand Sons. In which regard, I do the same thing. I take the Thousand Sons away, so I get a small loss, but that eliminates our worst looking row on the Matrix. That got rid of 2 blacks, 2 greys, and a red. Brian was our problem player. So I was like, well, I'll take that then. I'll take the small loss, and then the rest of the Matrix looks quite good for everybody else, and I'll still take the worst board for you all, so that Alex and Nathan can play a little bit better. So that's what we did. And they gave me exactly that, Typhus and Brian. So I took Brian, played on board 1. But then, with that row gone, the rest of the Matrix looks pretty healthy. However, we think here Stud Check made the wrong call, and we were talking about it with them afterwards, and they said, okay, yeah, we could kind of see that. And I think they came forward with their Blood Angels, so they put one of the combat armies forward that we thought, oh well, these are the 2 they need to keep in their hand for Josh. So because they put one forward themselves, that Innes had to play into Nathan, and then I'd gone on Brian. And what that meant is the Matrix was very yellow for Alex, Nass, and Josh at that point. And it did go the way we wanted it to go. So Josh then went next, and he got the sisters that he wanted, which was kind of the best matchup for him in our whole team, like in that whole matrix. And that left us, that pairing strategy at the start gave me a losing draw of a grey, which I got. But it then gave Nathan a black, which is, a small win. And it gave Nas, Alex, and Josh all yellows. So our pairing went great. And the results did kind of reflect, our matrix pretty much bang on.
Well, I mean that's really big, isn't it? And I think there's a bit of player matching there, and I think that you shouldn't pair like that, but you have to pair into that's Josh and that's Manny, and people don't want to play certain people with certain lists. They don't. I think Anthony Vanilla is a fantastic 40k player. I think he'd back himself to beat you, Alex, and go, yeah, I'll give him a game. I think Brian would go, yeah, I can give Manny a game. He's not afraid to play you. Do you know what I mean? I would say Innes would go, maybe, I don't want to play Harrison's car park, or I don't want to play Nazim's guard. I'm going to go forward, and then I can play a good combat list. I can probably beat Nathan. I'm sure that he on paper would have said he would beat Nathan's Grey Knights.
I think that comes down to a different matrix. So our players think one thing, their players are going to think another. And that's something that, you find out after the game. So yes, it is a player ability, but it's also understanding the matchup. Now, whenever we practice amongst each other, and we know our lists quite well. We're quite well practiced, I think, with each of our lists. Albeit maybe Nathan on his, having very last minute.
Yeah, because he switched last minute. Yeah.
But I knew how my game goes into vanilla, whereas he did say it was a tough game, but he didn't think he thought it was a winning game for him. Whereas in my head,
exactly that. I would think that he would play that in an American tournament and smash a Marine car park.
Yeah. But the way, don't get me wrong, I got a little bit lucky. He felt, it's not crazy, but he failed a 6-inch charge with Angron. But that was mainly because of the board. The board is a bit harder for the Mangron to move around. He is quite quick with his advance and charge. I can't stop him, but I can give him a little bit, extra move. He failed a re-rollable 6-inch charge, and that meant Angron died turn 3. He did come back turn 4, which was an 8-point swing. So I would think I would have won 15-5 at that point. But yeah,
still a close round. And again, you know what? They're good players. Guys, I think you guys can hold your hands up and go, yeah, your first round was a grudge match, and the guys are really lovely, but they probably weren't quite ready for you. But I think the other 4 rounds were. I think the French team were really good. The Zugzwang really good. You played the Swiss team on the Super team. So you guys did not have an easy run to get the victory. Well done.
Yeah, we did have a pretty tough run there, but I think the one main thing to say as well is the stud check round was lovely though. Like we had 5 great games against 5 great opponents, and I think it just goes to show that even though you're playing at this top level, even top players can have a laugh and a joke and play the game in the right way. And like for example, me and Brian, we both we had a few little things that we messed up or forgot here and there, and the both of us were just like, yeah, sure, bro. I knew you wanted to do that, so that's not a problem.
Yeah, 40K,
stuff like that, and I think it's about winning in the right way.
Yeah,
we all want to win. We're there to win. Yeah, that's the thing. We're all there to try and win for our team, but it's important to do it in the right way, right?
Was that round pretty comfortable for you guys? Did you feel like you were losing at any point? Was there any swings in any of the games?
Yeah, there was. There was one point, and it was quite interesting because I think this might have been because Nathan hadn't played with that list into the Blood Angels, so I think Nathan didn't know exactly how much damage his list actually does. So what happened there was Innes went for a crazy turn, and Innes, I went over as I was walking the line, and Nathan was like, well, Innes went for a big push, and he's managed to kill 1 Land Raider, 1 Dread Knight, and all 4 of the little scoring pieces. And I was like, wow, okay, that is pretty big. But for Innes to do that, he had to come out with absolutely everything.
And he's still got 2 Land Raiders and 4 Dread Knights.
Yeah, he's still got 2 Land Raiders and 4 Dread Knights. So Nathan was like, okay, this bit's gone bad. I might only get like 3 or 4 points. And this is about where it's about knowing your matrix and where the round looks like. So this one was looking a bit closer than the other rounds. So I said to Nathan at that point, I was like, look, bro, 3 or 4 doesn't really do anything for us. So I was like, just try and push. I was like, if you can get your 4 or 5, that'd be great. But just try and push now. Like, it doesn't matter. The 3 or 4 wouldn't win us the round. So whether we get that 3 or 4 or lose it doesn't really matter. So I was like, push. Just like go for max output and see what happens. And fair play, dude. Nathan went to town on Innis. He destroyed so much of Innis's army. And then Nathan was like, yeah, I got 14 points. So Nathan won that 14. His clapback into Innis was very big. He killed a lot of Innis's army.
He has got a lot of good shooting though in that army. It's
Yeah.
and tricks. And
But my game could have got a bit wobbly after that because I had to make a push, but Brian then punished me. But Brian came in with Magnus instead of a disc sorcerer 1 turn early, which kind of salvaged the game for me and let me stay in there for only an 11-9, which was good. But then Nas, we had to get Nas to push, so his 12-8 went down to like a 10-10 because his push went a little bad. But then on the other side, Alex's push and Josh's push went quite well because at that point I had to tell everyone, try and get a few more points out of the game than you can because we've got one game that's going a little bit badly. But then
when you talk about this, when you talk about pushes, I have flashbacks to bad WTC events where when it's you get the same thing in 8-mans and people do want to push and they lose points in games where they didn't need to, and that person turns around and goes, "Oh, it wasn't that bad. I actually got 8, and I said I was going to get 0." And you're like, "Dude, we've drawn the round. We needed 1 point somewhere, and it could have been from somebody just being more conservative." It is the biggest part of why we spend so much time.
We had a funny one.
The Matrix, isn't it?
Yeah, we had a funny one because Nas was like funnily annoyed at the end because he was like, well, in that round, he was like, not that round, the round after, he was like, oh, I could have got like 15, 16 points in that game. And I was like, no, but you got your 13, right? We won the round. And he was like, yeah, but I could have got 15, 16. But what it was is at the point when I was walking the line, this was the final round. The Thousand Suns player I was playing was told to push because he quite cleverly deployed a little bit slower and took a lot of time in his movement in his first turn.
Yeah.
And I think it's because he knew that, of course, he's in a favorable matchup. His Thousand Suns is my Eldar. So if he's told to push, he can make like a sort of like a healthy push. So he was going the slowest, but then I think their captain was like, William was like, okay, we're a little bit behind, you need to push. So he then went for a really big push, which he killed 2 Hawk units and a Shadow Spectre unit. But to do that, places where he...
That's not a big push in the context of your army.
As in pushing his army.
If you have a Manny's army, it's got 3 Shadow Spectres, 3 Swooping Hawks, 3 Warp Spiders, 3 Scourges, 3 D Cannons.
5% of his army.
Yeah, you've got 20 units. He's killed 3.
That's wild.
And none of them do any damage.
But what I meant is he had to push into like an aggressive position on the board.
Completely.
And while doing that, he'd forgotten about my D cannons that were placed right at the front of my home ruin.
Oh, come on.
So he kind of walked into D cannon range and he teleported behind me, turn 1 with the crystal to get behind enemy lines and no prisoners. So that's why he killed like 2 Hawk units and some Shadow Spectres. But in return, he lost roughly half of his army. So he dropped 10 Cabal points turn 1.
Sounds worth.
So because that happened, like I'd already got a 20 and the other games were looking like comfortable small wins to us. So I went to Nas and but Nas was like, oh, I could get 15, 16 here if we need to push. And I was like, no, bro, I was like, it's fine. I was like, I said to him, I was like, is it a safe push? And he was like, no, it's a push. And I was like, no, don't do it. And I was like, if it's a push that could go bad, don't do it. And at the end, he was like, oh, for God's sake. But it's like, you have these moments in the game where people can see that they can get more points. But if you're comfortable in the round already, you should, as a team, like take a step back and go, okay, maybe this player doesn't need to push here. Just keep your points tight where they are. And we're winning the round.
That's where when we pick new players for the team, it's hardest, I think, trying to teach them the mentality of look at the points you're going to get, have the game prediction in your head all the way through. Have you points to, especially in this edition of the game. I don't understand why people don't have, even in singles play really, I'm going to get this many points. I'm going to get 90, I'm going to get 95. If he drops me here, I'll get 90. Like, they just have a running total in their head. Obviously, tactical cards can swing things for you, and things can die, and your opponent might have a strat or a move you didn't expect, but you should have a game plan to go, this is what I'm going to get for my points. I'm going to get this many points in secondary, this many points in primary, and I've got that game map. And we had, even last year at WTC, we had players who didn't have any sort of idea at turn 3 what the points were going to be at the end. They had no prediction ability, even just looking at their own score sheet for a minute. And I think
for sure,
such a big thing for singles play, where you're in a race almost in singles play to hope to just to pip that guy by one, especially in UKTC where it's all 1 point wins you the game and off you go. We'd have to train players to think differently to that. Go on, Alex. Sorry.
It's okay. I think that's a prime. Manny's opponent is a prime example of how not to go when you're told to push, especially early in the game. Like if I was playing that Thousand Suns game a bit different on stream, and then Manny came over to me and said push. That doesn't mean I just frontline and just charge out and hope I kill everything and lose the game, which is what it sounds like your opponent did, Manny. Like, I think it just means, right, I need to get as many points here. I need to play for that card. If I have to sacrifice that unit, I will do so just to get an extra 5 points.
Yeah.
You know,
This is
like,
what I
if you
meant by healthy push.
Yeah,
He could have
coming
made
back-
a
coming back
healthy
to-
push.
Yeah, coming back to
Yeah,
the matrix
I-
colours. If you do a push, right, and it goes, my push will put you up one matrix colour. If you push and it goes bad, it'll go down one matrix colour. I'm happy with that push as a risk if we need the points. If it's a push where it goes up one or down to a red, it's not worth it. It's just not worth it.
Yeah,
There's
and I
not a
think that's
world
what
where-
he did.
Yeah, that's not a world where that balances.
No.
So, well, gentlemen, we have been talking about 40k for a good hour and a half now. So I'm going to draw to a close, but where I want to draw to a close is, where do you guys see yourselves going to next? Alex, what do you think of the Marines? Is this the finished final form of Marine Car Park, the yellow bricks of doom, or are there more bricks to be tested?
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to stick with Marines for now. What variation of Marines? I want to test out more stuff. I want to try Space Wolves. I want to try Blood Angels. I think that car park variation's pretty much tried and tested now. I'm going to try some new stuff. Might dip my head in Tau for a bit as well. I've played Tau before, so I'm
He's getting back into his battle suit, ladies and gentlemen. There we go.
I love to get my battle suits out. So yeah, that's what I'm going to be playing with next.
Classic toy soldier flu after a foreign event. No surprises. No surprises. I've always got a cold after I go to WCC. How about now, Manny? I know you've been swayed after playing Brian and watching Alex get decimated on stream. What are you trying for this weekend's upcoming Home Nations event?
Yeah, so I'm filling in for a player that had to drop out from Home Nations. So I'm using Thousand Suns. So I got onto the team and Raf was already using Eldar, and I was like, okay, like what else can we bring to the table? The Thousand Suns. I've played like 10, 11 games with them. That's why we didn't submit them for Alpine. But since then, I've had like another 6 games with them, and I'm quite comfortable on the Thousand Suns. And like you say, after playing them twice this weekend into Brian and Toby in the final round, it's given me more of a taste for how other players are using them as well as how I'm using them. So picked up some more stuff, and I'm really excited to try them at Home Nations this weekend. But I think the main thing that I'm really happy for, right, and this was the biggest thing I learned from Alpine, the biggest takeaway for me. Guys, in a teams event, you need a coach. Oh my God.
It's
I'm
so
so
useless.
happy. I'm so happy there's going to be a coach this week. So at Alpine, they said your captain was the only person that could walk the line, and it was the only person that could speak to other players on your team during the round at all. No one else could talk to each other during the round unless both players' games were already over. And oh man, so I was walking the line while playing my own game. Like every half an hour, I tried to go, and it really bit us a little bit in that France round where Alex had his game on the stream against 1,000 Suns. I went over, and it looked like it was going bad, so I told people to push, and then I myself started to push, because that one game looked bad, but I couldn't then. Half an hour later, because we were getting tight on time, I found myself I couldn't go back an extra time to Alex. And if I had, and we would have seen, oh, actually, Alex is looking a bit more like a draw, I could have said to people, okay, I know you've been pushing, but ease off that push now. We're actually looking a bit more comfortable.
Yeah.
But because I couldn't, I had to finish my game as well. It just showed the importance of having a coach there.
And I think
Could have gone wrong for us there. Could have.
WTC's grown in fame and stature as a tournament, but teams are also growing in terms of their support, how they plan, how they prep. And, there was a recent chat in the captain's chat where the WTC initially said we're going to limit the number of support players to 4 per team. And they had a massive backlash from all sorts of captains, for all sorts of reasons, really. And it was really funny to see that the big nations, and I say the big nations, I mean the nations that usually bring big squads and achieve top 5 or 6 places in the team, have they were like, well, this is outrageous. We've got a big squad already. We've booked tickets, we've booked travel, hotel, etc. But then alongside that, the little nations went, well, we quite like them having a coach per every player's table, because those guys would bring our players water and they'd chat about the game, and if there was a rules issue, or like if my player wants to go to the toilet, they'd get my captain or our coach. Like they helped out. They didn't just help their one team, not help the others. So it was really interesting that was the feedback. So they've gone back on that. They're going to allow unlimited coaches, but they're probably just going to put a limit on how many coaches go near the tables.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. That is pretty cool. But yeah, coaches, guys, very, very important in teams.
Well, on that note, ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to call it there. It's been a pleasure speaking to you both. Thanks very much for giving us your insights on both the lists and the event last weekend. Best of luck for this coming weekend with home nations. Manny, we might speak to you in the future and bring one or two more. Hopefully England are able to bring a win home back in that, because that will mark a pretty successful build-up to team selection, which is going to take place at the end of April. And I'm hoping that with our next episode of this podcast, we will be able to also announce the 8 players that we're playing for Team England.
Very exciting time for Team England.
Indeed. Gents, thank you so much for coming on and talking to us.
Thank you very much for having us. It's been awesome. It's always fun to chat 40k.
Indeed. Right, Chris, pleasure as usual.
Yes, that's just mine. Bye, everyone.
So at the end of another successful episode, the only thing left to say is if you guys could hit the like button and even hit the subscribe button for us, that would really help us to grow YouTube. You can find out more about Team England through our Facebook link below and our Discord. Feel free to join and get involved there. If you want to even support Team even further than that, you can find us over on Patreon as well. And this podcast is available via Spotify and all good podcasting services. Until next time.